Thursday, January the 17th. Lake level still right around 905, just a couple inches under. Same place it's been the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is a little over 10 feet below normal pool. Water temperature, this past weekend I was surprised it was still pretty warm. It was, 47.5 on the main lake. Now the upper river arms, especially earlier in the week, it had ice on them. And that's kind of normal for this time of year. That shallower stained water cools off a lot quicker, and it will freeze. The main body of water, like the main lake, everything from Shell Knob to Kimbling up to the dam and up into like the 86th Bridge in Long Creek, it takes a lot more to cool that deeper, clearer water down. But actually went out Friday and Saturday, had a really good day Friday, probably one of the better days I had on a crankbait in a while, and I was pretty excited because we had a tournament Saturday. Well, the way we caught them Friday, we messed around about 4 or 5 hours throughout the day, different deals, trying to catch them on the A-rig. We never could put together a pattern on the A-rig. I don't think we caught a fish, pretty much throughout the day on it. What we did catch them on is every time we'd pick up a crankbait or a jerkbait, we'd catch some fish. And the crankbaits I was throwing, we were both throwing wiggle warts. And the one that worked the best for me on Friday was Fall Creek Lures, the custom painted one. I don't know exactly what he calls it, but it's kind of red on the sides with the green on the back. Now another one I caught a few fish on too was I think it's a natural craw. This is not a custom painted one, that's just a standard color. And I've been throwing at wiggle wart on one of these new, I've been talking about Lou's had their new shipment of rods coming in. Well, this is one of them right here, this new laser series. It's a 7-foot rod, and it's graphite, but unbelievable how sweet it is throwing this crankbait. What's good about this rod is it actually, instead of just the tip being soft, it bends all the way through the rod, real thin diameter. Unreal how light the whole rig is. And I'm throwing it on a 5-4-to-1 ratio reel. And I think that's real important because with the water temperature like it is, you just had to crawl the bait along. And most of the better fish, you wouldn't even feel the bite. It was like the fish were coming up behind the bait. You'd be cranking, staying in contact with the bait, and all of a sudden you'd get about a foot of slack in the line, or the line would just start moving off sideways. And we had several fish in the 3 to 4 pound range, which is really good compared to the way we had been catching them. And we caught some on a jerkbait. Most of the jerkbait fish we caught on a spro and a mega bass. Now most of the crankbait fish were back in the creeks, and we kind of figured a little deal out. They weren't so much on points, but they were on rock transitions. It was where it went from like a pea gravel chunk rock mixed, and then you had to find some of that bigger ledge rock, isolated ledge rock in the bank. And some of the best places were the depth change, where the channel would actually come up against the bank, swing in or swing out. Seemed to be the best areas on the crankbait. We didn't catch hardly anything on the main lake. Everything was back in the creeks. Now the jerkbait was just the opposite. Everything we caught on the jerkbait was out on main lake points, and seemed to work best was bluff ends, where you'd set in the channel. It might be 50, 60 foot, where you could cast over the point to the shallow water. On the back side of the point it might only be 5 or 6 foot deep, but it seemed like we had to have timber, submerged timber out in the water. Some of it you couldn't see, it might have been 8 or 10 foot down from the surface, but we either idled across the points first and found it on our Lowrance electronics, or some of the places we knew the timber was there. And Friday, the baits that were working the best was the mixed stick. This one here is a translucent. On the sunny days, we had a lot of sun out Friday. It was in and out. But when the sun was out, they seemed to hit the translucent bait a little bit better than the solid color bait. Now, Saturday, the day of the tournament, I got 3 keepers right off the bat. So I thought, man, this is going to be easy. Because I figured if I took that 4 or 5 hours where I was messing around with the A-rig the day before and just kept my head down and kept cranking and throwing a jerkbait, I'd have an extra 4 or 5 hours of catching fish instead of looking for them. Well, as a lot of you know, you've been there before, it really didn't work. I didn't catch them. I mean, I caught them 3 in the morning, and the next 7 hours were pretty slow for me. And I kept switching up my baits, switching up the banks. And the killer was, after the tournament, I got to talking to several of the guys who caught them on the crankbait, you know, kind of in the same areas where I had been. I don't know exactly where I messed up, except I should have, you know, expanded on my area. What I did is I worked everything that I had worked the day before, and that was probably a mistake because with the temperature that it is, there's not a lot of fish up there shallow, and it's probably a pretty good chance I stuck the ones in practice that I could have caught in the tournament. So, you know, I think if I was to do it all over, you know, I thought a lot about it Saturday, but I thought if I was to go back out Sunday, I would do the same pattern except in different areas to try to find some different fish. You know, Friday, when you catch a fish on the jerkbait, the fish would have it nose first. So, I mean, it was they were definitely eating it that day. They'd have the front hook in their mouths, and most of the time the bait would be in there sideways on the jerkbait. Now, on the crankbait, almost all the fish, you couldn't even see the crankbait. They were sucking it so far down in their gullet. And, you know, when I was talking about they would put slack in your line, a lot of times what they're doing, they're just coming up from behind that bait and eating it and swimming towards you. That's where you get the slack. And even the jerkbait was some pretty violent strikes. I mean, they were flat eating it. The day of the tournament, you know, I lost a good fish on the wiggle wart, and then the next one I caught, he just barely had the back hook in his mouth. So, you know, I think a lot of it, I was probably fishing too fast. You know, it got a little colder that day, and the more anxious I got, the faster I was cranking. And that's where, you know, like a 5-4 to 1 with speed reel will really help you slow down. And, you know, sometimes I'm as guilty as anybody about it. When the fish aren't biting good, I want to cover more water and fish faster, and I needed to be doing just the opposite. But also I've had some reports that the guys are catching some deep fish, vertical fishing out there, and they're real deep, you know, 60 to 70 foot in the centers of these creeks. Now, I just got my new HDS 9 touchscreen. So this coming week, I'm going to get out there. It looks like it's going to get real cold this next week. I'm going to get out there, do some vertical fishing, play with my new graphs. So hopefully I'll have an accurate report of, you know, what's going on out there deep. But even though I couldn't get anything going on an A-rig Friday, it doesn't mean they're not biting it, because I believe first and second place guys were throwing an A-rig. Apparently I just wasn't throwing it in the right area. And, you know, I've been talking about, you know, Sportsman Factory Outlet has had a closeout on their reels because, and rods, because they've had their new ones coming in. Well, they've got their new ones coming in, so if you get a chance, you need to either go online to Lose or stop by Sportsman Factory Outlet and look at their new team, Lose rods, and even their Laser SL. They've really made a lot of good changes. I'm really excited about a lot of the rods. So, till next week, good luck, good fishing.